Hey everybody, welcome back to the garage. Another episode here. We're going to be installing the oil pan. We already did the DOD delete, active fuel management. I have a video about that. It's a short, so it's a real quick 3-minute video, I think. Anyway, we're going to be putting this on today, and I want to show you a few things underneath the car before we get to putting this on. Well, underneath the oil pan, one of the reasons it's so tough to take the oil pan out is this wiring bracket sits under here, about right about here, and it carries two positive cables, real heavy cables, and if you have the oil pan off, take the time to pull this out if you've got it kind of loosened up. Well, I'm pretty sure you would have had it all loosened up in order to get the pan out, but I took it completely out. I cut the zip ties that go into these holes and bought some on Amazon to replace them. But I cleaned this tray out. It was full of gunk, and the wiring is a mess. Let me show you something on that. Well, hopefully you can see this. So these are AC lines. These are the two battery cables that sit in that tray. They come from over here, the right side of the car, and then they go along inside that tray up to the left side and up into the engine bay. I've taken something called friction tape, and I pulled off the split loom, and this little one in that split loom had been wearing to the point I could actually see the wire in the insulation. There was a little hole. It hadn't got big enough to do any problems, but there was a little hole there, and this one was not in split loom. This one was. So I wrapped it all in friction tape and went to the store and bought some split loom, and I'm going to tape that on there now. And then we're going to be putting it back into that wiring tray after we get the pan on. Hopefully I can do that before getting the pan on. I might do it before I put the pan on just for ease. It's a lot easier to get under here with the pan off right now. This is your standard electrical tape. This is Super 33. They also have Super 88. Both of them have a purpose. Cold weather, but 3M makes really good electrical tape. This is also a 3M product, and you can see the texture. So it's called friction tape, and it's made out of cotton, and it's got some light adhesive on one side. It's not super sticky, but once it's on there, it really kind of sticks to itself pretty well, and it's meant to put onto things so they can't slide back and forth on each other so much. So these went on mostly as just a barrier, and then when I terminated this up the cable, I wrapped a little bit of this on it to help keep it from unraveling. And I'm not wrapping the whole cable in this because I'm going to put it in split loom anyway. So just wanted to give you guys that tip, and pay attention to those wires down there, because they can really cause you a problem later, and they're really easy to fix now if you have the pan off. This is the oil pan gasket, and we're going to be riveting it onto the oil pan just like the old one. There's one of the rivet holes right there, and then the other one is over here, and that helps hold the gasket in place while we set that. So here's the oil pan installation. You can see in the picture where the black arrows are. That's where you're going to be putting the RTV, and that is the point where the timing cover meets the block. And I explained that in my timing cover video. You can actually see it where I ran the straight edge to make sure that those were even. So that alignment is critical. You don't want to use the oil pan gasket again. Obviously get a new one if you've got the oil pan off. You can see here they've also used it on the rear structure. This is the where the flywheel goes. So you have to put it into the cracks there and there as well. That's the front going that way. Well, they said it's not necessary to rivet the new gasket to the oil pan. It wouldn't be. It would probably make it a little bit easier so it's not flopping around when you're trying to install it. I'm going to go ahead and rivet it just to hold it in place. Makes it a little easier. All right, so I got new gloves on, and I went ahead and cleaned the gasket with alcohol. You don't want to clean it with brake cleaner or acetone because it might attack the rubber. Probably will. But the rubber was pretty dirty right out of the package. I want to get a nice clean seal. So I degreased the pan. Now this is nice and clean with alcohol. And I just blew it off with some compressed air to get any lint off of it. And I'm going to go ahead and rivet it to the pan. To help align the gasket to the pan, I put 4 clean bolts in the corners before I'm going to do the riveting. I'll make sure the pan is, or the gasket is at least square onto the pan, and I shouldn't have any issues. That looks a lot better. Looks more in center now. All right, pop that rivet. Came out nice and clean. It's not higher than the aluminum of the gasket, so that's good. And we can take these bolts out now. Clean the rest of them, make sure the threads are good. Good and clean. The nice thing about riveting the pan gasket on is if you ever need to loosen the pan for any reason, it makes it a little easier for it to stay in place exactly where it was, so all the sealant stays put. And one of the oil pan bolts, M8 by 1.25 die. Just like to clean up the bolts. Looks like there's some junk on them. Cleans them up, chases the threads, and after this I'm going to wash them in brake clean and hit them with a little bit of maybe a toothbrush or a brass brush, and get rid of all the little crumbs. All right, well, we completely wrapped the red insulation with friction tape. Then we put the split loom on all the way to the ends, overlapping the old split loom, and then secured it with a little bit more friction tape. And this is ready to go into the tray. So we want to degrease these corners, get the oil off of them. So I sprayed a little brake cleaner on a rag. I can do all underneath here, but mostly I just want to get these corners so I can get the RTV to stay, so it'll seal well. We're going to be putting the RTV on now. It's amazing. This thing has been open for probably a couple weeks, few weeks, and it's still dripping oil. Oil still coming down the side of the block and getting along the edge there. It's amazing how long they drip. The oil isn't going to hurt anything being on the gasket. Be careful not to get any paper pieces in the engine. That would not be very good. But yeah, just clean it up and get the majority of the oil off of there. Kind of pushing it into the groove, even though the groove really isn't there. I mean, it's is really not much because of the gasket that was already there. That should be plenty. I'll give that a little bit to set up on all four corners. So if you're not wanting to use the black RTV, the GM sealant is part number 1237-8521, or if you're in Canada, 8890-1148. Don't worry about the LS7, same on the LSA. Alright, well, we got the pan on. It wasn't too hard. Wasn't too hard at all. It was a lot easier to put on than it was to take off. So we didn't put the tray on yet, just because I wanted to have the room to be able to put this up. So got the back bolts in first and kind of held it in place for me to get a couple of the ones in the front, and now we're just going to go around and get them all in. Kind of loose. They're not torqued, obviously. Well, there's two torque ratings that we need to be aware of right now, and that's number 439 and 453. So they don't call them out here, but it says tighten the oil pan to block and oil pan to front cover bolts to 18 foot-pounds. Tighten the oil pan to rear cover bolts 106 inch-pounds. That's inch-pounds. It's inch-pounds because those are really long, skinny bolts. They're kind of weak. The two in the back that go into the block in the back, that's what that's talking about. Those aren't the two at the transmission. Those aren't tightened yet. Alright, so those two bolts on the transmission going to the oil pan, transmission to engine block bolts, 37 foot-pounds. Now we're going to go ahead and torque these. So these are going to be 106 inch-pounds, these little ones. The rest are going to be 18 foot-pounds, inch-pounds and foot-pounds.